Dudes podcast Thursday live stream. We are going to talk about a few different things. In this week in satire, Moloch, the Babylonian, is it the god of child sacrifice or the god of death?
It's the god of child sacrifice.
The god of child sacrifice is going to be facing some supply chain issues. So maybe talk to Mr. Buttgig about that.
Yep.
Because that's clearly a transportation issue. And then, of course, in our rant of the week, we are going to... Oh, no, not in our rant of the week. In our new word order, getting things mixed up, we are going to be addressing extremism. Very difficult and nuanced topic that is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about a few different things in our snooze you may have missed, including a massive breaking news update from Pfizer regarding the death rate in the first 28 days of the vaccine. In our... What is it? Trojan Pony section. In our Trojan Pony section, we are going to be addressing the Ministry of Truth and how they are kind of hiding and trying to say this is for your own good, but really it's just to control what you read and what you see and what you think is true. And then finally, our final section is actually going to be the Shrewd check, which is the first time I've ever done that. And we are going to talk and debunk some new pro-abortie arguments that have been coming forth lately because the left is out of their freaking minds. All of that and more on the Shrewd Dudes podcast. Okay, another Thursday live stream. We are back. We are ready to go.
Oh, I'm ready, man.
I know, and this week has been relatively good in like generic mainstream news. It's been really good.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about it.
My family is unfortunately sick. It's kind of funny that like every day I'm just like, ugh, like if I was like a bad person, I would take tomorrow off, and then like yesterday, my wife is sick. 2 of my kids are sick, and I'm just like, yeah, I think I have to stay home to take care of them. Because, like, Steph was like, I could barely get out of bed. And I'm like... And then I could just hear, like, Abby, she's like... And I'm like, I hear Becky, and she's like... And I'm like, oh.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is bad.
Sounds almost
and then, like Tori threw up this morning, and I'm like, yeah, it was a good idea for me to stay home.
It sounds almost like, what do you call it? Like, you know, How I Met Your Mother had an episode where, like, Lily smoked, and she sounded like an old, like, you know... I love you, honey. You're the best. It's like,
just
it was
creepy
the
as all
funniest
get out.
voice. It was the funniest voice for her. Like,
scratchy beyond all reason.
Little redhead, and it's like, it sounds like a grizzled old grandpa. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. It's like, no. No.
I still find it funny because today I went to one house. I had to knock on the house to tell them we're power washing. Nobody answered, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess nobody's home. Lady comes out back and she's like, sorry, we're all inside with COVID. We're like, you better not get too close. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I got an unlimited immunity,
Unlimited power.
Pretty much, actually.
I know.
Not only do I have that, but I also have the vitamin D, just like flowing like wine. It's great. Flowing
like wine. And then at my parents' house, they always have quercetin. I'm just like, yep, you do. Of course you do.
Stuff. That's the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. It works wonders. Wonders above wonders for COVID. But, of course, the government will never recommend it because then they wouldn't be able to push the clutch check.
Which we are
and yes, YouTube, I said it. Haha. But
I'm actually looking forward to the stuff today. We have some cool.
Yeah, we do.
Cool stuff to talk about. So, first story is one I love.
Might as well jump in. And we'll talk about this week in satire. So, as we said, Moloch warns of looming child sacrifice supply chain issues.
Not Moloch.
I love how they have the Democrat spokesman as Moloch.
It's basically Jen. That's what I see whenever I see Jen Psaki up there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Moloch is back. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Got no soul.
It's
anyway,
the press
so.
secretary for Moloch. In
Hey,
a somber
there we
press release outside the burning gates of torment and suffering, the fire god. Oh, it's the fire god.
go. Fire God.
Yeah, things we did not know. The fire god Moloch warned of looming supply chain issues regarding child sacrifices. Moloch added that human sacrifices, purifications, ordeals by fire, mutilations, etc. would cease until the supply chain shortages were sorted out through democratically violent means. Ooh, this transfers like perfectly into the next story. My demon. All right, I have to do this I'll do this in the scratchy smoker voice.
Do it. Doing the smoker voice.
My demon logistics department is reporting a supply chain shortage of children to sacrifice upon the burning idols and in the fiery pits,
said the god of brazen gratification and hedonism.
The scarcity of innocent young lives to be brutally murdered at my feet is mostly due to the United States Supreme Court's upcoming reversal of Roe v Wade, led by white supremacist Clarence Thomas,
who is a black guy. A comfortably large percentage
well done.
of the U.S. population cried out in fear and terror at the prospects of not being able to sacrifice children of a loving Heavenly Father for their own selfish desires. Eyes rolled back into their sockets and blood-curdling screams pierced the air in the name of egomaniacal convenience.
No! It's like that girl from like the Trump rally. He's like,
Yep.
no!
And so now it's the crazy woman voice. What about my career as a corporate drone who loves binge drinking on the weekends? Cried one woman at the steps of the Supreme Court building while holding a protest sign reading, My body, my choice, my family, my career, my parties, my barren, loveless life. Because that's what you are, woman. At publishing time, Moloch was considering an allowance of back alley child sacrifices using common household objects and horse medication. For those who are wondering about the horse medication, that's literally what anarchist groups are recommending and trying to get horse pills to procure abortions.
We covered that on Tuesday.
On
and
Tuesday,
it was
yeah.
funny.
It's like,
It was like so funny.
the hypocrisy.
A total reversal.
Total reversal, but it is hilarious
As Paul
how
Joseph
they just have
Watson
no
says.
clue
Yeah, as Paul
that this
Joseph
is...
says, it's okay when we do it.
Yeah, it's totally okay when we do it. All right. So, just a bit of a last-minute thing before we get going. Of course, if you're following us along with the video, if you have any commentary, if you have any questions, just lay them in the chat. We're going to be periodically checking them as much as we can. Of course, there are going to be times whenever I'm watching a video that I can't go and look at questions. So just be warned about that. We're going to try and address all the questions as they come up. Any commentary, we'll try and go back and forth. And of course, Danny will keep an eye mostly on Facebook, and I'll keep an eye on... And YouTube. Well, I'm not expecting too many people on YouTube because I think our new channel has 2 or 4 subscribers.
No,
because, yeah, they just removed us. Again!
Yeah, they did.
Because, thank you, YouTube. You are a bunch of schmucks.
Censorship for the win.
Oh, and I pressed the wrong button. Sorry.
No, what have you done? What have you done?
Oh, no, I didn't. I just have the intro in one of my, like, quick scenes, and I'm like, oops, nope, that was bad. But now we can go into the next section.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just cue that up right now.
Wait, aren't you doing the Twitter? The Twitter.
Oh yes, yes.
You got some other funny things that from this
I
week
do
that
have
I
some
thought
other
was
things from this week that were funny. So our best tweet of the week, which was actually from this morning. So women on TikTok say hookup culture will be absolutely decimated if Roe v Wade is overturned, and then you have Darth Sidious. Good. It's like, yeah. I love the recommendation, and of course we'll talk about it in the news you may have missed. But they were mentioning it on the Timcast IRL yesterday, and it's like women. It's like, yes, we're gonna have a sex strike if like Roe v Wade is overturned, and we will not have sex with anybody until we're in like a committed long-term relationship with them. And it's just like, good.
Your terms are acceptable.
It's like, we accept your terms because you don't realize that you have converted to conservatism and what Christians want. Because we want you in long-term relationships so you don't kill your kids.
One of us. One of us.
One of us.
One of us.
Yeah, so that was our best tweet of the week. It was fantastic. And it's still getting reactions.
It's really good.
And then another meme which we saw, of course, along the pro-life line, because that's the big chat this week. So we have Phoebe and
Joey.
Joey, yes. I was like, I can remember Chandler and I can remember Ross, but I couldn't remember Joey. But so you have Phoebe.
A fetus is both a human and alive.
A fetus is
both human and alive.
A fetus is innocent.
A fetus is innocent.
Killing the innocent is wrong.
Killing the innocent is wrong.
Therefore, abortion is wrong.
You want to control women.
Joey.
Oh, man.
Joey, you got so close. You came so close, Joey.
Which is basically what it's like talking to a pro-abortion.
Oh, I know. It is totally what it's like talking to a pro-abortie. It's just like, no, that's not, no.
Nope.
Oh, come on.
Come on, follow the logic. Come on, just follow. No, so close.
It's like,
this close.
Life begins at conception. And they're like, we don't know when life begins. And it's like, okay, well, here's a bunch of biological textbooks that prove that life begins at conception. It's like, you're a man. You can't talk about this. And it's like, oh, you're just dumb.
Wait, I thought men could get pregnant.
Yeah.
You're like,
see, that's another good rebuttal to that one. Another one that I use whenever they say that men can't have a say on abortion. I'm like, so you want to reverse Roe v Wade anyway? Because that was decided by 9 men. They're like, well, they were just confirming women's bodily autonomy. And I'm like, oh, so you only want men that agree with you? I'm like, yes, blatant hypocrisy. Like, it is strong with you.
Ultimately, they like the game when it benefits them. If you play by the rules and learn how to beat them at their own game, they're like, we don't like this game anymore.
Yeah.
You suck. And they walk out.
They take the basketball and they walk away.
Yeah, basically.
Anyways, so now we're going to jump into the new word order. New word order has a very short intro compared to the other ones.
It's pretty epic though.
Okay, so all right. So this week, Biden in Newsweek, Biden ramps up his anti-MAGA rhetoric. So President Joe Biden on Wednesday used harshly critical terms when describing the far right segment of the Republican Party. What a joke. Calling the MAGA crowd the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history. And then, of course, he corrects himself in recent American history. And we're going to quickly watch that video, and then we're going to talk about the fact check.
Well, that got struck down. Griswold was thought to be a bad decision by Bork, and my guess is the guy's on the Supreme Court now. What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
Most extreme
political organization that's existed in American history.
Those are some bold words, I would say.
Exceptionally.
Bold words.
Yeah, so
considering
of course,
how long America's been around.
Yeah, so Biden claimed falsely that the draft majority opinion by Justice Samuel Alito that we covered on Tuesday would endanger other rights, ignoring the fact that Alito explicitly said that it did not affect other rights and limited the holding to abortion alone. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Yeah. Rather than dealing with Alito's actual opinion, which the president implied he had read fully, Biden hearkened back to his old opposition to Judge Robert Bork, whom he and other Democrats demonized when he was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Ronald Reagan in 1987. Biden, who chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time, pioneered the practice of attacking a nominee's ideological views, arguing that Bork's opinion that there is no right to privacy in the Constitution meant that he was too extreme. Bork failed to win confirmation as a result. And of course, I believe the term for what he did is called borking. It's actually now an official term. Borking.
That's an actual thing? It's like they took his name and turned it into an adjective?
Yeah, because it's basically like, what is it, steamrolling? Well, they basically did the same thing with Kavanaugh and with Comey.
Kavanaughing?
Well, Kavanaughing was, of course, worse than Bork because it wasn't about ideology. It was basically just like, yep, because you're on the right, then we are going to try and steamroll your nomination. But thankfully, back then, the Conservatives had the Senate majority, and they had it for Amy Coney Barrett as well. And because of that, Roe v. Wade is getting overturned. In your face, Debbie's. But
now, the funny thing is that Joe Biden himself, he was like he claims that we're like crazy and all that. I mean, I also remember that Joe Biden himself worked hard to try to like reject like not only the first black woman to be like on the Supreme Court. Remember how he was actually instrumental in blocking the first black woman on the Supreme Court, but also in like like actually making it possible for Casey versus I forget what it was,
Ferguson.
Ferguson, for that case to win because it was because of this one Supreme Court judge that he then one nominated. So I mean, they talk about like how they're playing the game, they're playing the system. I'm like, you've been doing it for years. Now you're
just also honestly, I have to click on this because this was just something that I saw, and this is the most extreme political organization in recent American history. Pro-life activists outside Scottish Justice Alito's house to thank him. They literally have signs big thank you and praying for you.
Dare they?
So extreme. So extreme. But then, okay, let's compare. So they're outside Alito's house saying thank you, we're praying for you, like, stay strong. And they're keeping, of course, the left-wing rioters away from his house. And this is what the left-wing rioters and left-wing pro-abortion activists are calling for. This is not the person who Biden is calling extreme. But he should.
If they actually do this, that would be the time where rioting would be okay. I got the pitchforks, you get the gas and the torches. Let's fucking do that shit. Because, You're not forcing... No.
I can't even. I can't
What the
even.
heck is that guy wearing?
I have no idea.
One solution to this. To all of this. Because it's all interconnected. Starts with V, ends with E, and it's not vote.
Hey, TikTok. Do you ever wake up in the morning and think you just want to burn it all to the ground? And what I mean by burning it all to the ground is those old white men and the women who support them who want to tell me what to do with my body.
If Roe versus Wade gets overturned, there will be mayhem.
I don't think that was a gun. I think that was a knife.
No, I think so. She cut her tongue with a knife.
In these streets.
Yeah. That's why she was going like...
the global protests around George Floyd were big? You just fucking wait when you launch an attack on 50% of the American population.
Secondly, if you supported the use of violence to defend abortion clinics when the state recognized abortion rights and the cops were doing it, you should have zero problems with people outside the law now doing the exact same thing.
Just so you know, the same left who said that, like, oh, you're inciting violence, you're threatening people's lives with your words, are the very same people who are doing the exact thing, but actually calling for violence.
Yep. Actually calling for violence. My goodness.
Go figure the extremism out there from those pro-lifers calling for everyone to die. It's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. By the way, Paul on Facebook, I had to look this up because I was like, I hadn't heard about that. He said that Biden voted against Roe v. Wade back in '73, and I was like, two things. I was like, was Biden like? Is that how old Biden is?
Well,
we
think about and this is actually relevant to the discussion that they talk about the Republicans have moved so far to the right, and it's like, no, they actually haven't. Republicans have moved to the left. They just moved to the left much slower than the Democrats, because the Democrats are basically, and of course my mother's sending me a message now. She's like, you guys should cover this story, and I'm like, too late now, Mom.
Well, here, let me. Here, I looked it up in the New York Post. So, so it said that Biden like he just said, like, oh, we're gonna overturn the right to choose and all that. But here's what it says. In 1973, when Biden became the youngest member of the Senate at 31, he was 31 years old in 73, and 17 days before the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, he said, I don't like the Supreme Court decision on abortion. I think it went too far. And he voted against it. He voted against the actual decision. I was like, I did not know that. Joe Biden himself is one of the people that voted against Roe v. Wade, and now he's like, oh, how dare you vote against Roe v. Wade? It's the ultimate hypocrisy. I'm like, wow. So Joe Biden calling people who oppose Roe v. Wade extremists, he just self-owned himself.
Yep. Self-owned, baby. Self-owned.
Self-owned.
The best kind of owns.
Yeah. You just got born, boy. Born.
And just because my mom did it, I'm going to share to her profile. I'll be like, hey, Mom, maybe you should tune in.
Oh, maybe that's a good idea. So what are some of the other crazy, not extremists?
Not extremists, of course.
Talking about.
So, yeah, a visibly shaken and angry Senator Elizabeth Warren just spoke in front of SCOTUS. Oh, this is just,
This lady is the epitome of not unhinged.
Not insane. I am angry. Rah, rah, rah.
And determined. The United States Congress can keep Roe versus Wade the law of the land. They just need to do it.
I've never seen you so angry. You seem to be...
This is what the Republicans have been working toward this day for decades.
Good.
They have been out there plotting, carefully cultivating these Supreme Court justices so they could have a majority on the bench who would accomplish something that the majority of Americans do not want. 69% of people across this country, red states and blue states, old people and young people, want Roe versus Wade to maintain as the law of the land.
There's the hero.
And we have a right. Extremists, we've heard enough from the extremists.
No, what she's referring to is there was a poll done a few years ago, and they're like, oh, do you support, like, keeping Roe v. Wade as the law of the land? And it's like, well, yeah, 60% said in support, but you could also say that with almost any case, because there's a decent chunk of Americans that don't know what Roe v. Wade is, and they're like, well, I guess if I don't know, then I'm probably just going to agree with the Supreme Court because they know more about the law than I do. There was actually a poll a few years ago that said 15% of Americans think chocolate milk comes from brown cows. So let's not be too vested in public court of opinion. But then when they actually break it down, and they did some Gallup polls, and actually I'll look it up live. Gallup polls abortion. Okay.
What we got?
A record high. All right. This should be it. Pro-choice or pro-life, 2018 to 21 demographic tables. So pro-choice, pro-life, 49% pro-choice, 47% pro-life, 5% no opinion. So her saying 60% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, not really honest. And then they should say there should be a line. It's like, do you think that abortion should be illegal in most... There was a poll that I'll have to look it up a while. I'll link it.
There's a lot of polls that have been done over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Loads of polls and poll, like, first of all, polls can be manipulated with bad questions, with bad misleading ideas or loaded questions and all that. So you have to really kind of analyze them. Secondly, polls can be manipulated by choosing a very narrow demographic. Like, there's a whole bunch of problems with polls. But I know I've heard loads of polls too that have said that there's quite a few people that oppose abortion. And if you break them down into demographics, like, do you think that there should be some restrictions on abortions in the third trimester? Most people will say absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that should be in the second trimester? Most people will be like, yeah, I still think that should be.
Oh yeah,
limited.
most Americans that are polled do agree that abortion should be restricted in all. I think the question was all or most cases. And the majority of Americans do say that abortion should be restricted in most cases. And then, of course, when the question is reversed, it's like, do you think it should be allowed in all or most cases? And it's like, all right, well, most Americans are actually in between. They say that they don't want it completely banned, but they do want restrictions on abortion outside of what Roe v. Wade allows, which is exactly what removing Roe v. Wade will do, because it'll put it back to the states. But let's keep talking about more of these extreme reactions from not the right, but from the left. So, Daniel,
before you go on, just really quickly want to mention that most Americans, and believe it or not, most Canadians want some restrictions. The real extremists are the people calling for no restrictions all the way up to birth.
Yep.
Most Democrats believe that you should be able to have an abortion until the baby is breaching.
And then some, such as the governor of, or the old governor of Virginia, think that abortion should be allowed after birth.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
They had a whole little scandal about that.
They did.
It was a really big deal.
It was a really big deal, and it was part of what led to his downfall. And that was fantastic. Truly, truly fantastic. So, moving on.
I see some of the more not extreme.
So, yeah. So, Daniel, D.W. Felder Law, it's time for a revolution in response. Like we talked about on Tuesday, we said that, yeah, civil war is not out of the range of the norm for what these people want to suggest in response to abortion, to Roe v. Wade being struck down.
I'm a little confused, though. I thought that, calling for violence was bad, Stephen. And didn't they say, Trump's, inflammatory rhetoric, calling for, we need to take up the fight and we need to, fight like hell. It's isn't that, calling for revolution? Isn't that bad? Oh, those rules, those only apply to Republicans. Huh?
Yeah.
Silly kids.
So, leftism for you. Antifa accounts are calling people to rage and riot by all means at our disposal, to go to the homes of Supreme Court justices and to leave the riots if you're being peaceful, after leaked reports of the Supreme Court allegedly planning to overturn Roe v. Wade. So, Puget Sound is from Canada. It's our moral imperative to show up and stop the continuing slide into explicit fascism by any means at our disposal. The people doing this have names and addresses. Liberals will march and chant their way right into fascism. Peaceful protests are not enough. Rage and riot.
We're gonna stop fascism by doing fascism. Good call.
Yeah.
Good call. That's the way to go.
If you find yourself or someone else peace policing, I do not give an F. If it's the organizer of the rally, it's time for you to reassess or leave. Didn't see S. Yeah, these are peaceful. These are not extremists.
Very peaceful people. Super peaceful.
Yeah. And then, of course, Joy Behar and Sonny Hostin blame Trump for Dave Chappelle being attacked on stage. They claim he got into the minds of the entire population. It didn't happen before. But I think Trump unleashed some incivility in our country. Well, that's not true.
So the idea here is that this is obviously in response to the... there was an incident where Dave Chappelle got literally attacked. And, the idea here is that somebody tried to tackle him on stage when he was, in a comedy show. And again... The left talks about violence and so dangerous from the right, but then they themselves downplay violence and it suits them. I mean, these are the people who are extreme, that they excuse violence, they call for violence. They really are dangerous people.
Yep.
And in every aspect, not just in abortion, also people they don't like. It's okay to hit Nazis, and it's okay to to rush the stage and try to tackle Dave Chappelle in a live show because, hey, it's all good because as long as it's the people that we don't like, then violence is okay.
Yeah,
right, Steve?
Oh yeah, definitely. So let's continue. Yeah, I don't really want to listen to this crazy.
That's okay. That's okay. There's more
crazy
stuff.
Lunatic.
Yep.
And then, of course, in Canada, Trudeau called someone a faggot.
The F word, but not the F word you might think. If you're watching, you can see the word. If you're listening, it's a 6-letter word, and it's not the having sex F word.
Yep.
It is the F word that will get you banned from just about
How
every
long is
social
this
media
video?
platform.
Oh, it's 3 minutes. Do you know when the time
like
stamp is?
Go. Like, listen to the first little bit. Basically.
Yeah, so we were asking questions about several articles that had appeared in the Globe and Mail. There was one in the Ottawa Citizen related to the use of Canadian military aircraft during the Freedom Convoy flying over Ottawa. It's question period. The opposition has a right to ask questions of the Prime Minister. We asked the question of it. He responded, of course, as he's always doing now, that the opposition is engaging in misinformation and disinformation. We were just asking a question on what was in a newspaper article. After my colleague Carrie Lynn Finley sat down, the Prime Minister used an unparliamentary term. He dropped an F-bomb. Everybody in the first 2 rows across from the Prime Minister heard it. I asked the Speaker, there was a point of order that came up from the member from Foothills asking for an apology. By that time, the Prime Minister had already left the House of Commons. I then provided some clarity to the Speaker as to what was said and asked the Speaker if he would look into Hansard to see if it was recorded, because if it was unparliamentary language. And I can assure you that there was nobody on our side, despite how the debate went today and the question period went. There was nobody on our side that used the F word like the Prime Minister used today.
Oh, no. Show of hands, maybe take your bets. How many people think that the Prime Minister will face any kind of consequence for that word? 0%.
Like, I don't like how he refers to it as saying the F-bomb and the F word, because it's like, okay, well, it's a different word.
It's a much worse. Believe it or not, there's a worse F-bomb. It's spelled F-A-G-G-O-T. Like, I don't know if you remember Stephen Crowder. They got kicked off of Shopify because they had a T-shirt with Che Guevara, and it said, like, it's something it blotted out. It had the 4-letter word, but it blocked out the second letter, and they got kicked off of that. They used the exact same word. They removed it because they used the wrong word. The thing is, these people, imagine the Prime Minister that is so above the law. He has no fear that he's charged by the RCMP. He has no fear that he's ever going to face scrutiny for anything, and he can drop a word like that in Parliament. And everyone, and he's protected. It's crazy. These are the to me, when I think about extremism, I genuinely think about the lunatic left.
Yep.
And the problem is, you get extremism when people are allowed to have bad behavior, and they never face consequences. If you have a kid, I mean, I'm sure, Stephen, you've seen them. I've seen them. Those kids that are running wild when you go to a school or a playground, they basically are out of control. No, they will throw tantrums. They will go into a store and throw things on the ground. Why are they like that? Because there's no consequences. Those kids are extremists because they have boundaries, no boundaries. That's the left right now.
Yep.
And the worst part is that by throwing the word extremist around like it's like going out of style, they cheapen actual extremism that has happened in the past. And you can go through this article.
For sure. Totally. They definitely cheapen what the reality of terror and extremism is. So the United States has a long history of large-scale terror attacks dating back to the foundation of the country. So the 10 most dangerous, Orlando nightclub, that was just a few years back. Hillbilly Massacre, which is a long time ago, or Hillaby. The Wyatt Mask. I've never even heard of these. The Wyatt Massacre.
Wyatt Massacre in 1880.
The Nadhuden, which is during Nadenhuden, which is during the American Revolutionary War. I've never heard of most of these. The Colfax Massacre, or the Colfax Riot. Mountain Meadows Massacre. Tulsa Race Riot. Definitely heard about this one.
Yep, 1921.
Oklahoma City bombing, the Unabomber,
the
Lawrence Massacre, again, never heard of this one. And then, of course, most notable of all, September 11th attacks.
Yeah.
That's extremism. What the liberals are suggesting is also extremism. Because if there is a revolutionary war, a civil war, any sort of serious civil uprising or serious violence, then that's extremism. Like we look at BLM in 2020. That was extremism because it caused upwards of about $3 billion in property damage because you had entire city blocks on fire.
Let's not forget the Ku Klux Klan, which was an invention of the Democratic Party.
Indeed, it was.
Democratic Party. That was the militant wing, and they were like going around lynching black people and going around causing all sorts of terrorism all over the United States. Does that count, Mr. President?
No.
Mr. Former Vice President? Does that count as
Mr.
the
Former
extremist
Vice President.
one? Or what about like I think Tim Cash? They were talking about it. There was like there was a worse attack at Congress. I think it was like in the 80s. They said by a group. I forget what the group was called, but they actually had bombings. At Congress, but like you don't need to know about that. Like,
of course not.
Like the number of extremists, dangerous extremism, all over the world, all over America is unbelievable. How many there are? This is why this word is an absolute joke. Because
it's certainly become an absolute joke. Yeah.
Well, here in Canada, like how they talk about there's only one organization that has been treated as as a terror group. You know what that was, Stephen? The Proud Boys.
I was just about to say that. I was like, I know this.
The Proud Boys. Of all the organizations that have done like all sorts of violence and terror here in Canada, the Proud Boys, which have actually probably not done anything violent here.
No.
And yet this...
Well, like Tate actually was a member of the Proud Boys for a while. And he's like, they were really just kind of boring. We just went out to bars and talked about stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, that's probably what they were going to do.
And then you had Antifa last weekend. They basically had a full-on riot in Montreal.
Yep.
Didn't see people without that in the news. So extremism. And the problem is when you use this word and you wear it out, that then real extremism goes unnoticed.
Yep.
And the worst part, they're projecting because they're the worst extremists.
Projecting.
They're the worst extremists. They're the ones that want to kill a baby, even after it leaves the birth canal. That's extreme. I don't know. Could be wrong. Could be right. But that seems extreme to me.
Oh, it is very extreme.
Mm-hmm. One last thing before we go. So Paul Skirtle said had a comment.
Yeah.
Said the idea was for abortion to be an issue controlled by the democratic process. So polls, just an indicator of how some might vote on the issue. Yeah. I agree with that in the sense that in America, it was always meant to be a state issue.
Yeah.
And I think that the problem was that the Supreme Court basically became legislators.
Yeah.
They
legislated their own subjective morality.
Yeah. And all that's happening is you're returning it back to the state. So this is reverse fascism.
Yeah.
Like the fascism is we want top-down control of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the opposite of fascism is we want like smaller government.
We want smaller government and municipal and municipal, provincial / state governments to have much more power than the federal government, and the federal government should really be only in control of the protection of the nation and other overarching things.
Yep. Foreign policy, all that.
Yep. So the federal government coming down and seizing control of abortion was an abuse of power to the extreme.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Anyways, we are now going to... Yep, that's all we're going to talk about in our new word order on extremism. So now we're going to talk about the news you may have missed. Mm-hmm. And we're going to start off with a bit of a crazy story. So we're going to start off with a story from Pop Crush, which is not a source we've ever used before. So NASA sending nudes to space in hopes of attracting horny aliens.
Hopefully they're not ET.
NASA scientists are planning to send nudes into space to attract aliens to Earth. According to NASA, a physical depiction of the senders of a cosmic message would certainly be of compelling interest to any alien race. Will scientists get a call back? They certainly hope so.
You want to create an invasion force? That's how you create an invasion force.
Yeah, the Naked Invitation is part of the NASA's Beacon of the Galaxy project, which aims to contact intelligent life in the galaxy. The nude photos will be spent as an invitation alongside a series of pics that show a markup of the solar system, highlighting Earth with a world map and a list of planets' composition and characteristics. It's actually fairly similar. For those who have ever watched Star Trek, and are familiar with a program that was involved in the 80s and 90s called SETI, which was the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, they would send this complex system of like prime numbers, and they would have like Leonardo da Vinci's drawings of like male and female. So those were actually nudes as well. But they were more of like anatomically correct models.
More artsy.
Yeah, these ones are still actually anatomically correct models, but they're more of gifs, and they just have the just waving, and I'm like, this is so stupid.
It's terrible.
So
oh my God.
this is not going to attract the kind of aliens which we want to attract.
No, we want the good aliens, not the horny, live in their parents' basement.
Parents' basement. Yeah. All right.
Are gonna come like Venom. All right. In second story, from Blaze Media, the View host got ruthlessly mocked for threatening sex strike to oppose overturning of Roe v. Wade. The less of these folks we have reproducing, the better.
No kidding.
Yep. I love the idea of anyone in the View not getting sex. I'm like, you know what? Don't worry, we're all behind you. So the View host Joy Behar called on women to go on a sex strike. I love how they always use this. This is like their big move to protest against the possible overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. The proposed act of defiance of support of abortion was wildly panned on social media based on ruthless Twitter reactions. Women in the world have conducted sex strikes in history, Behar said during Wednesday's episode of the View. In 2003, a sex strike helped to end Liberia's brutal civil war. And the woman who started it was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I hate to say it, you're not Peace Prize material, miss. In 2009, Kenyan women enforced a sex ban until police political infighting ceased. Within 1 week, there was a stable government. The problem is that people in Liberia and people in where was it? Ethiopia? No,
in Kenya.
Kenya. These people actually have self-control.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you do not have self-control. The idea that you could hold out for like 24 hours is laughable.
Yes, it is laughable.
Unbelievable. Yep. Old Trill Harpies.
Yeah, and it's exactly what the conservatives want. It's like, yes, we want you to delay having sex until you have a stable relationship. Yes.
Good.
Have you become a secret conservative? Not really, but you're still supporting us.
You.
Yeah, so Elon Musk set to be the temporary Twitter CEO after deal closes. So, journalist David Faber at CNBC has reported that Elon Musk is set to become the CEO of Twitter temporarily after the $44 billion deal goes through. The current CEO of Twitter, Parag Agrawal, notorious twat, reportedly told Twitter employees that Twitter's future is uncertain due to the takeover. Agrawal said, once the deal closes, we don't know which direction the platform will go. Inevitably a better direction than under you. However, there are some indications that Musk has major plans to revamp the social media platform and lay off staff. Good. We talked about that last week in our This Week in Satire about like 12 jobs that they could be doing that would be much better suited than trying to regulate the, quote, free speech platform. But moving on to other people that want to regulate free speech, Danny?
All right, so for this is from the Daily Mail. Jen Psaki chokes up as she introduces her partner in truth, Karine Jean-Pierre, as Biden's new press secretary. Openly LGBTQ deputy will be the first black woman to take the job on May 13th, when Jen leaves and likes to go to MSNBC.
Yeah.
The White House broke the news in a Thursday afternoon statement that also reveals current press secretary Jen Psaki is departing on May 13th. Biden lauded Jean-Pierre as a strong voice in his administration. She's passionate, she's smart, and she has a moral core that makes her just not a great colleague, but an amazing mom and human, Psaki said. Oh, I thought that was Biden speaking. It's my bad. Psaki told reporters she was trying not to cry. Oh, she's a bawling machine.
She is.
Cry on command.
She gets emotional at the slightest hint of anything.
I really do think she should go into acting. I mean, the amount of tears and emotion she can manufacture in a moment is pretty impressive, actually. She refused to comment on her future, and amid speculation, she's going to MSNBC. Well, she is a fake news kind of pariah, so I mean that's a good location for her. Anita Dunn is returning to her old role as senior Biden White House advisor. So basically, we're getting a spunky black woman with attitude, man, and she's gonna take
LGBTQ.
over. And she is totally like fabulous too, like the fabulous. So, and the funny thing about this story, Biden continues to check all the check marks on his intersectional, like, game of bingo. I think Biden is playing intersectional bingo, and he has to check off all the proper things. So if you look down at the bottom, Stephen, you can actually see the picture of the potential new blackie that's coming over.
Yeah, I love how Jen Psaki in that image is just like, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me.
No, really, what it is Jen Psaki is basically like she's a ginger. She has no soul. So whenever she can hug somebody else, like sucking the life force
just like
out of them into that.
He's coming for me.
Yes, that's right. Sucking the life force out of like anybody who comes near. That's basically what it is. So,
well, according to who is it? Nick Cannon. White people have no soul. So it's not just gingers, apparently.
Devoid, all of us.
Devoid of souls. All right, the last story in the news you may have missed. India bans forced vaccinations and the vaccine mandate. From the counter signal. In India, the Supreme Court just banned forced vaccines and the vaccine mandate, stating that it violates Section 21 of their constitution that protects individuals' bodily integrity and personal autonomy. Judge Rao stated that with respect to the infringement of bodily integrity and personal autonomy of an individual considered in light of vaccines and other public health measures introduced to deal with the COVID pandemic, we are of the opinion that bodily integrity is protected under Article 21 and no individual can be forced to be vaccinated. Further, personal autonomy of an individual, which is a recognized facet of the protections guaranteed under Article 21, encompasses the right to refuse to undergo any medical treatment in the sphere of individual health.
Well done, bro.
Good for India. Very good for India. They actually protect their rights. They're more American than Canada.
India gets it.
Yeah, but speaking further and a little more in detail about the vaccines, let's talk about Pfizer. Pfizer documents over 1,200 people died during the Pfizer vaccine trials. That's pretty crazy. Following the release of the Pfizer documents, it's now confirmed that 1,223 people died within the first 28 days after being inoculated with the BioNTech Pfizer vaccines during trials, and it was still approved for use. If you want to read the document yourself, you can do so by clicking on this link right here, but be warned it's dense, containing over 80,000 pages. So this is a screenshot. Table 1 presents the main characteristics of the overall cases. Of course, this is cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse event reports. General overview, selected characteristics of all cases received during a reported interval. So, gender, of course, it has male and female, age range, yada yada. Case outcome. Recovered, recovering, 19,000. Recovered with sequelae. Not recovered at time of report, 11,000. Fatal, 1,223. Unknown, 9,400. Unknown.
Kind of a deadly outcomes, I'd say.
Yeah, as shown in Figure 1, the system organ class that contained the greatest number, above 2% of events in the overall data set, were general disorders and administration site conditions, nervous system disorders, musculoskeletal and connective tissue disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, skin and subcutaneous tissue disorders, respiratory, thoracic, and mediastinal disorders, infections and infestations, injury, poisoning, and procedural complications, and investigations.
That's a lot of crap.
So that seems like it's far from being safe and effective. Pfizer's documents prove otherwise. The BioNTech Pfizer vaccine is perhaps the most ineffectual, dangerous vaccine ever brought to market. Besides slaughtering over 1,000 people in under a month, trials also produced hundreds of potentially fatal side effects, created fertility issues, and were only 12 to 15% effective at preventing infection overall, and subsequently dropped to less than 1%, despite health officials claiming it would be over 90% effective. Of course, they were lying. However, this should come at no surprise, as Project Veritas previously caught Pfizer scientists admitting that national immunity is probably better than vaccination. Of course, we covered that about 6 months ago.
We did.
So, yep, this is pretty damning. But Pfizer is still approved by the FDA. The FDA restricts the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine due to blood clot risk. This is, of course, just from today. U.S. regulators on Thursday strictly limited who can receive Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine due to a rare but serious risk of blood clots. The Food and Drug Administration said the shot should only be given to adults who cannot receive a different vaccine or specifically request Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. U.S. authorities for months have recommended that Americans starting their COVID-19 vaccinations use the Pfizer or Moderna shots instead. So they said in a statement that they decided to restrict J&J's vaccine after taking another look at the data on the risk of life-threatening blood clots within 2 weeks of vaccinations. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember how, early on in the pandemic, we were told, what's it called? AstraZeneca was all good,
Mm-hmm.
And then AstraZeneca's getting, a lot of play. And now Johnson & Johnson. The thing is, what we haven't been seeing is that there's been a massive war among all of the vaccine companies, and it's all going on behind the scenes. We're not hearing about it. And one theory about the Johnson & Johnson one is that people, because the Johnson & Johnson is a one-dose vaccine, that messes with their plans, or with the current approach, which is to get nonstop booster. With the Johnson & Johnson, it throws off the whole regimen because you're supposed to only have one, whereas Pfizer and Moderna are two. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that was possibly one of the reasons why they're kind of targeting Johnson & Johnson. I mean, it's just a theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's clearly a lot of things
more problematic than they are letting
to be
on.
more at play here than what we're being told.
Yeah. So this is I thought this was crazy because I'm like, this trial was only 45,000 people, and if 1,223 people died, I'd say max they had about 50,000 people.
What was the number? What was the number of people in the trial?
Well, in accordance with this general overview, characteristics of all cases received during the reporting interval. Relevant cases 42,086, and of those 1,223 died.
42,086.
Yeah, that's actually
that's 2%. 2.9%. That's basically a
3% death rate.
Death rate.
Yeah,
that's insanely high.
It is exceptionally high.
Actually, for anybody under 70, that death rate is basically almost the same as it would be for COVID.
Yeah,
so basically, if you actually look at the numbers, just straight numbers, that's basically the same. You have the same chance of dying from the vaccine.
Yeah, if you're above 70, yeah.
No, if you're below 70, if you're above 70, the death rate's higher. Obviously, remember COVID?
From COVID?
COVID, the death rate if you were under 70 was ridiculously low. It was 0.03 or something like that. It was really, really low. Way less than the flu. The flu is 0.1.
Yeah.
0.1 is if it's COVID, if you're under 70, 0.01. Remember correctly.
Yeah.
0.03.
0.0, 3 to 5.
But if you were over 70, the number goes it goes higher up to 0.5. So it can be more deadly, but still not nowhere near the crazy bubonic plague or Spanish flu numbers. But
yeah,
right. So the vaccine, this is just this is the kind of thing that they've already shown that the vaccine is more dangerous than almost every other vaccine in human history.
Yeah, it's crazy sketch.
Crazy stuff. So more evidence. I mean, the evidence is just piling up of all the dangers of the vaccines. Definitely look into that because there's a lot more going on than you're being.
Definitely. All right. So that's the news you may have missed and the special section about the vaccine because it was just too important to miss out on.
Good stuff. Did you turn off the music?
Yes, I did.
You forgot to do it one time, so I like to bug you.
Well, no, there was one time I turned it on too early.
You did. Yeah. It's why is this already on?
And then there was another time I forgot to turn it on because it's a background thing. However, it only turns on when we're actually in story mode. It doesn't stay on when we're in commentary.
Okay.
So now we are going to go. I think this is a Trojan Pony.
Trojan Pony.
All right. So here we go. All right.
All right. So what are we covering today in the Trojan Pony, Stephen?
Today's Trojan Pony is about the Ministry of Truth.
Sounds like a lovely organization.
Yeah, it's truly fantastic.
How could anything bad come out of that?
Yeah. So here's a Babylon Bee video, which we thought was kind of funny, and it's just a good interlude.
Can I set it up first?
Please do.
I know it. Okay, so really quick. So the topic today in the Trojan Pony, again, Trojan Pony is basically they're setting you up. They're giving you this nice sounding thing, but really it's basically a poison pill. It's a trap that's designed to destroy you in the long run. The Ministry of Truth is obviously a reference to Joe Biden's, Department
Disinformation Commission.
Disinformation Commission, which is basically designed to police speech.
Yeah.
Now the Babylon Bee, which always has a great take on things, they basically did in actual video form what everyone believes this will eventually devolve into. Now, watch this video. Watch how they set it up, and basically this is the fear that this is where it's headed. Obviously it's like satire, but it's not too crazy or far off from where this could potentially go. So, it's hilarious too. So enjoy.
Okay.
Welcome to the Ministry of the Disinformation Governance Board.
Whoops.
You've been brought here for the crime of spreading misinformation on the internet.
How dare you?
Tweeting isn't a crime.
It is now. You criminal.
But everything I said was true.
We will tell you what is truth, and you will repeat that truth. Do you understand?
All I did was call Rachel Levine a man. He's an adult human male. It's an objectively true statement.
Winston, every time you lie to me like that, I'm gonna play this song.
International laundering is really quite ferocious.
Make it
stop.
That was our executive director, Nina Jankowicz. It's not very pleasant, is it? Now let's try this again. If the party says that Rachel Levine is a woman, then Rachel Levine is a woman. Now, what gender do you see?
Rachel Levine is a man.
So you still refuse to speak the truth. Let's try something different. What do you see in this picture?
Yeah, that's Larry Elder. I love that guy.
This is a white supremacist.
How
Tell
dare
me
you?
you see a white supremacist.
No.
Dude's black.
Dude's
He's a white supremacist. This is the black face of white supremacy.
That doesn't make any sense.
It does, if we say it does.
I think Clarence Thomas was the new face of white supremacy.
Oh, there's so many black face white
Please stop.
supremacists.
It's terrible. I'd rather listen to you too.
Very well. We have other ways of persuading you. When you received the COVID vaccine, you were implanted with a small device. It's a remarkable invention. By entering commands in this pad, I can produce pain in any part of your body at various levels of severity.
And the nerds.
Now, tell me the Hunter Biden laptop story was false.
But that story was true. The New York Post should have never been suspended.
It was disinformation! Tell me Stephen Colbert is funny. Tell me!
No! He used to be funny years ago, back on Comedy Central, but he's not funny anymore. Come on!
It's all over.
Ow!
He's no longer funny.
Tell me Trump colluded with Russia.
But the Mueller report said...
There was a P-tape. Trump made a P-tape.
There was no P-tape.
Tell me, how many genders do you see?
No.
Two!
No, he's all over. It's all over for him.
You lie. The governance board has no choice but to leave you here until you have a change of heart. I only
Never.
hope you don't wind up killing yourself like Jeffrey Epstein.
Hey, Epstein didn't kill him.
Okay, the funniest thing about that is that Matt Walsh actually said that on the show. He's like, they should take that song and play it in the torture chamber that they're probably going to put you in with the disinformation board. And I'm like, that's exactly what he said.
That's exactly what happened.
Great. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Okay, but let's get serious. How much of this video are you watching?
You can kind of fast forward to like the relevant scenes. So like you can start at the beginning and go to the scenes where whenever what's his name Rand Paul starts talking, that's kind of the relevant scenes. The guy's answers are useless.
The guy's answers are useless. That basically.
So this is Mayorkas. So the Mayorkas is Mayorkas is basically the Homeland Security, the Secretary of Homeland Security. So he's the guy in charge of the disinformation board, and Rand Paul takes him to task.
He does indeed.
Showing what the nonsense that he's spreading. So, yeah, just watch this. We love Rand Paul. He destroyed Anthony Fauci, and he's doing the same thing for this loony.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I was just kind of sharing on Twitter. But let's start.
Dossier included Russian disinformation.
Senator, that's not a question that I'm equipped to answer.
It was in the public news. It was you may have heard of it, the Mueller investigation. It was a $32 million investigation that went over a couple of years. Horowitz was an investigator general, and he looked at the FBI's activity in the beginning of this. And what the FBI concluded was that there were FBI agents throughout this period of time who concluded that, yes, the dossier was full of Russian disinformation. So let's say it is Russian disinformation. You say your new disinformation governance board is going to help the public with disinformation. You claim it's not going to be about domestic. It's going to be about foreigners and those evil Russians. So here's my question. The FBI concludes that the Steele dossier was full of Russian disinformation. CNN propagated this disinformation gladly for years and years. The difference, I guess, between your opinion and our opinion is that as despicable as it is that CNN propagated this disinformation, I wouldn't shut them down. I wouldn't lecture them. I wouldn't put it on a government website that CNN's wrong for propagating disinformation. The problem you have is you're not even willing to admit, I mean, we can't even have an agreement on what the FBI said was disinformation. How do you propose that you're going to have an office of disinformation governance if you see the problem in even determining what is disinformation?
Oh, Senator, because our work is not focused on disinformation writ large. Where we, the Department of Homeland Security, become involved is when there's a connectivity between disinformation and threats to the security of the homeland.
Well, that's what the Russians might be considering.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop it right there. Because, like, what he considers to be a threat to the security of the homeland, they consider a lot of things to be a threat to the consideration of the homeland. They think anybody that suggests that the American election was slightly problematic in 2020 is threatening the homeland. They think that anyone who suggests the vaccines are anything less than safe and effective is threatening the security of the homeland.
Like, that's why they also cry about like Russian disinformation.
Yeah,
because if you say something, they label it. They have a little sticker, put it on you, Russian disinformation. Then they can shut you down. If you ever wondered why they use that to keep harping on Russia, is because by saying that what you're saying is helping Russia, then you're guilty of
you're guilty.
Then you're fair game.
Aiding an enemy of the state. It's like
no different than McCarthyism. Really.
Yeah. McCarthyism, but just completely unfactual. Anyways, okay.
He has
considered that. You mentioned the Russians the other day when you tried to pivot away from this being about censorship. But let's say it is the Russians. I know you're not going to ever agree that the Steele dossier, which y'all spent so much money on, was disinformation. But it was, and the FBI concluded. But let's just say there's an imaginary disinformation. You've discovered tomorrow Russian disinformation that's going to hurt our national security, and CNN's broadcasting it. What are you going to do?
Senator,
you're going to tell Putin, you shouldn't do this.
Senator,
what are you going to do?
Senator, let me explain what we do in the Department of Homeland Security with respect to disinformation, and frankly, what we've been doing for nearly 10 years across different administrations.
Doing terribly.
The cartels the cartels propagate disinformation that Title 42 does not apply to a particular community of migrants from a particular country.
How are they propagating this?
If I may, through social media. And what we do through U.S. Customs and Border Protection is actually communicate via social media and other channels that is false, that we do apply Title 42.
So let's say there's Russian disinformation as well. Are you going to take to social media and broadcast that people are broadcasting something incorrect about what do you think is Russian disinformation?
Senator, let me emphasize.
Well, you said the other day Russians, and now you're saying not so.
So here's the bait and switch that he's pulling. He's going to he basically is trying, and they're trying to couch this in this flowery language that, oh, don't worry, we're just targeting foreign interference, and then, oh, we're just kind of making sure we put the good information out there. They're just saying, like, we're just going to put the good information out there so people have more good information. We are the trusted source. That's the bait and switch. They sell it to you on this idea that, oh, we can provide you with accurate information. Like never mind that they're the ones that propagate most of the bad information, but they're the ones providing it. So that they kind of offer you this like nice golden apple of like, hey, we know the truth. Here you go. But really what they're going to do is they're not going to stop at just providing you with so-called facts and so-called truth. It's going to be sold to you as we're providing you with accurate information. And then it's going to become we're going to shut you down because your information is dangerous and harmful to our democracy and all this kind of garbage. But they do this every time they're pushed on it. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh no, we're not shutting anything down. We're just providing a valuable service. Yeah. Right. So you can go up to the next Rand Paul kind of talking point. A little more, because he just goes on. Right there.
Disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish.
Skip through this. This guy just repeats the same talking points.
Number one, that does.
Do you think COVID
it's like
civil liberties?
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what
Mayorkas,
disinformation is. And I don't think the government.
Mayorkas doesn't even mention that Title 42 is out the window. Biden is getting rid of it. So his whole statement about, the cartels are talking about Title 42. And it's like, within a few months, Title 42 is not going to exist. And so his entire recommendation and his entire point about, we're changing and we're making sure that we combat disinformation on Title 42. You are an absolute ninny. Because you're combating something, and then you're combating something that doesn't going to exist in a couple weeks.
Yeah. You see how he did that, though? He pivoted, and he's like, wait, are you saying we should just let this cartels win? And you can see, it's like the trying to take the high horse position. I was like, that is so disingenuous. This guy is, it's a very dishonest way of going about, and he's also ignoring Rand Paul. But keep going. There's a
government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Yep. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation. So I do have a question, and here's the question. So the Russians, maybe some cartels. What about COVID disinformation? Is that in your bailiwick for your disinformation governance board?
Senator, you would have to give me the details with.
Okay, here. I've said a million times. I've said a million times that cloth masks don't work. YouTube takes me down. They're a private company. I can have that beef with them. What about you? You going to look at that? I often say that natural immunity from having had the infection is equal to the vaccine or better. You going to take that down?
Well, first of all,
those are very specific.
Senator, first of all, it's not for us to take it down. And second of all,
are you going to put information out there saying that I'm spreading disinformation?
Senator, we are not the public health experts to make those determinations.
So
to make those, oh my gosh.
The Disinformation Governance Board. No COVID disinformation. Yes or no?
Senator?
Yes or no? Is public health to be part of your censorship?
Somebody allow me, because you're presenting hypotheticals that are
no, it's not much of a hypothetical.
It's
not vague at all.
Very specific one on cloth masks. I gave you a very specific one on immunity from previous infections.
I answered your question, but let me answer.
His answer is not worth it. I promise you. I mean, you want to go look at it yourself. It'll be in the sources. But 2 points that he made. 2 points that Rand Paul made beautifully. And this is part of the whole idea of the huge trap that this disinformation board is all about. One, and I keep calling Fauci, Rand Paul. It's because I always associate the two. So Rand Paul, he basically said that, the government has a terrible track record when it comes to information. They do. They have a terrible track record. He named examples. In Canada, we have unlimited examples of terrible lies and blatant compulsive liars that the Canadian government. Yes, if you're going to say we're going to determine what's true or not, you better have a darn good reputation. And the government has a terrible reputation for lying to its own people. And I don't trust any government to be able to do that. No, you should not allow any one government official to do that. Second point, I know you caught this, Stephen, is that he basically asked them, do you believe that the American people are stupid? And the point I always harp on, when the government tells you, wait, this is too dangerous, we need to protect your sensitivities, we need to guard you, I'm like, that's what you do to children.
Yep.
This is why, like YouTube has a restricted mode, because you're a child, you need to be protected from sensitive content. Fair enough. There's a reason why we have, what do you call those? The movie ratings, 14A and the R and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? All of these ratings, all these protections for people, they end at 18, because by then you're an adult. And you don't need to be babysat. The problem with these disinformation boards and all these things that they're throwing out there is that they're incredibly insulting. You're basically saying, hey, by the way, you're too stupid to figure this out for yourself, and you need us to babysit you and to nanny you and to keep you safe from this terrible, awful information. And it's crazy. But ultimately, it's all a lie. They don't want to protect you. It's not about safety. That's always the catchphrase. Every tyrannical, totalitarian government in history has always taken away your rights under the guise of safety. Always. This is why they keep using this, because this is the oldest playbook in the book. The Russian government, the Soviet government, they took away people's rights, and they basically said, we can't have you go out there and talk because that's dangerous, and so we need to protect you. That's exactly what the every dictatorship in North Africa, the Libyan government, you don't have freedom of speech. We need to protect you from that. Yep. The South American governments, all of the dictatorships down there, freedom of speech gone. You can't talk about the government. You can't criticize us. It's for your own safety, and this is where it's headed.
Yeah,
this is why it's a poison pill. They're trying to lull you into the idea that it's all about safety, and this is the safety, the safe spaces garbage that was propagated on university campuses for so many years, and now applied to society as a whole. they're trying to bubble wrap the world, and by doing so, they're trying to rob you of all of your freedoms. They basically say, "Oh, it's too dangerous for you to talk." And I mean, just watch Twitter.
Yep.
Look what they did to it. They're crying like the world is falling apart because Twitter wants to police equally. I mean, Twitter could keep every one of their policies, their rules, make them clear, but as long as they police them equally, that alone would be a humongous improvement for the entire site. But they claim it's too dangerous, and what they want is censorship. It's not the rules that they care about. It's who gets banned, who gets taken off. So it's all a gigantic Trojan pony.
Yep.
It's all meant to convince you that this is good, but no, this is not.
Yep.
This is meant to imprison you, take away your rights, and keep you because they honestly and because they think you're stupid.
Yep, they do. All right,
and they're gonna follow up.
So just quick from the last topic we were talking about from Paul. He said he didn't know if we covered it tonight, which we did because he was gone for a while. Did you talk about the vaccines and blood clots, Johnson & Johnson, and vaccines and hepatitis? We did talk about the vaccines and blood clots in Johnson & Johnson and the Pfizer documents, which showed that the vaccines had killed quite a few people just in their initial trials. Vaccines and hepatitis, we did not mention that.
I've heard a lot of hepatitis stuff. I haven't actually looked into it.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing a lot of reports that not only is there potential hepatitis outbreaks, but also that there's something, it's not AIDS, but something very similar, or at least it looks a lot like AIDS in a lot of people who are getting them. And so, yeah, there's some really concerning reports. And I agree, it's not good. And considering how much they've hidden from the public so far, I would not be shocked by any of these revelations.
Not at all.
If they're true.
Yep. All right.
All right, Steven. Take us home.
Last thing, transitioning into the Shrewd check. All right, so the Shrewd check is we're just going to address a couple short segments from some really crazy pro-abortion fanatics who are claiming that our rights are being taken away and that our freedoms are being removed. Here we go.
It's a terrible setback for all Americans. It's an assault on our freedom, including our economic freedom. What does it mean to live in a country that's trying to compete worldwide, and we're the only country that doesn't have universal paid leave, that doesn't have affordable child care, and now that doesn't have reproductive freedom? This is a terrible outcome, not just for women, but for all Americans.
All right, stop that right there.
Yep.
Okay, cover some of those, Steven.
Okay. Well, the first article, she's like, oh, like it doesn't have paid leave and like paid and free childcare. You do not need paid parental leave. You do not need free childcare to be your rationale for not killing your kid. It's like, oh, well, why? It's like, I killed my kid. It's like, well, why'd you kill your kid? Well, the government wouldn't pay for me to not look after them. Like, that's literally the rationale they're using. It's just putting them in nicer terms. And it's like, oh, we didn't have paid leave. And it's like, yeah, paid leave is nice. But it's not essential. It just means that you need to buckle down and you need to support your family. And there are also other regulations like adoption for the person who is giving the child up. Adoption is free. And there are also, safe harbor laws? I think it's safe harbor, where you can literally put your child in a basket and give it to a fire department.
Yeah.
And that's legal. So don't give me this crap. It's like, oh, it's too like abortion should be legal because raising children are expensive. Yes, raising children is expensive.
Yeah.
But
so
if it's too much for you, you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So what she's doing is called no true Scotsman fallacy. Basically, she's basically saying, like, well, it's not really like, we
You're
need
not
to have
really
this,
caring about
this.
babies.
Yeah. it's like the idea of like, pro-life, right? Like even
Mhm.
Gavin Newsom was caught today saying like, if you don't care about climate change, you're not really pro-life. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's a totally
That's
different
loony.
issue. But here's the thing: even if let's say hypothetically, let's say she got everything that she wanted, she got the free universal child care, and she got this unlimited parental leave, like they have in like Danish countries, or like the Nordic.
Mhm.
Okay, you have like incredibly long maternity leave for women and for men and all that. Do you think for a second that she would be like, oh, okay, we got universal health care, we also got maternity leave. Okay, I guess we can.
I
maybe
guess we can ban
push our
abortion now.
restriction. We can restrict some
No.
abortion rights. No, it's not. It's like if you ask her, if you really push her, she would never say that that's actually the case. This is just a distraction. Be like, well, we can't even think about banning abortion until this is happening.
Yeah.
Okay, this is happening. Oh no, we should still ban it. We should still allow abortion.
Well,
at
it's
all.
also the same as whenever they use the rape and incest argument, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'd be okay with banning all abortions except for race, like just in the interim, to ban all abortions except for those committed by rape and incest, because that would get rid of like 99.5% of abortions. Well, you're missing the point. No, I'm not. You're just lying.
Yeah, it's like their go-to argument. So and then the second thing that she mentioned is the idea that what was the second point she talked about? Like we don't have these things. Oh yeah, that like we're this country is banning abortions. Like this is now a talking point I've heard everywhere.
Yeah.
They say if Roe is gone, all abortions are now legal. I was like, I've heard this everywhere, and it's a blatant lie.
Yeah.
And either they don't know, or they know and they don't care. They love.
They
the talking
know,
point.
they just don't care.
Yes, but like for the truth, if you lose Roe, you don't like it. If you're liberal states like New York, California, or half of the
Mhm.
states that are going to keep the abortion laws, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like yes, conservative states are going to probably put some restrictions in place, which is great. I think that's great. But it's not going to change overnight, and there's not going to be rules or laws that are going to say you can't go across states.
Yeah.
To get abortions.
Well, some states are, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. But like, yeah. So ultimately, like real pro-lifers will be like, no, we're not going to be satisfied with like, having abortion in some states and not in others because we think it's a human rights issue.
Yeah.
But still, like the lies are pretty. It's fear mongering. Is what it is.
The lies are strong with them. But let's continue on to more lies.
This is a fundamental assault on freedom, and what I feel mostly tonight is anger and a deep sense of sadness that my daughter Betsy and my sons Luke and Paul are going to live in a world with less freedom than I did, my mother, or my grandmother. That is a terrible setback for this country.
It is not a freedom.
No.
You do not have the freedom to kill another human being. That is not a freedom. That is not a right that's granted. It is merely you are allowed to do so because, as we have stated many, many times, and as we talked about on Tuesday, when we were talking about the SCOTUS decision, there is no right and freedom in the American Constitution that guarantees your right to kill another human person. There is no right and freedom anywhere in any legal document that says, yes, it's okay to kill another person if you don't want them around.
Yeah.
This is not a basis. This is not a freedom argument. And we're going to talk about this a little bit when it comes to Anna Kasparian, because she makes a very similar argument. Your rights and freedoms do not pertain to other human beings.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of categories that you can reject that whole notion on. First of all, on the legal aspect, Constitution, like they're a constitutional republic, the Constitution does not give. There's no constitutional right. The Constitution say like women's rights or the right to an abortion. Those don't exist, and the Supreme Court just recognized that. They didn't invent that. They didn't like cancel the rights. It just never existed. They're finally just cleaning house. That's a legal argument, and a moral argument. These are babies. These are living human beings. So no, you don't have a right. Just like if you're a husband, you don't have a right to have your wife executed because it's too much of a hassle to get a divorce. So I'm just gonna get her. I'm gonna hire somebody to execute my wife because too much of a hassle to get a divorce. It costs too much. She's going to put up a fight and all that. So I'm just going to execute her. The same is true for abortion.
Yeah.
And did you notice that she mentioned like her daughter and her sons?
And her 2 sons.
Her 2 sons.
It's like,
no, you
she's,
can't.
Yeah, she's
you
literally
can't
arguing that it's a good thing and that it's a great and moral good that her sons have the quote-unquote freedom to avoid responsibility by encouraging the deaths of the children that they conceive with women that they sleep around with.
Oh, they can't pressure and force the girl to get an abortion. Oh, my poor. Like, this is the bankruptcy that's found there. So,
all right, so
go
this
for it.
is the next segment, and I'm hopefully in the right area. So we might hear a little bit of Walshy.
It was articulated by Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks. Listen to this.
Almost perfect
We
time.
don't even have paid family leave. We don't even have affordable childcare in this freaking country. Okay, and the people who fight against those kinds of laws are Republicans.
And yet,
What do you want them to do with their kids when they have to go to work? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to do? I want them to answer that freaking question. Answer the question. Journalists, ask them the question. Ask them. Ask them.
Okay, settle down there, Karen. Settle down. You know, not the end of the world.
Oh my gosh. She's making this such a stupid remark. She's like, what do you like Republicans are making it so that you have to ban abortion and that like you don't support paid child leave. It's like, what do you expect them to do? And it's like, well, we expect for the men, like one member of the family to stay home with the children if they can't afford childcare.
Yeah.
Because that's what people have always done.
Yeah, see, I was having a conversation with a guy recently about abortion and all that, and he was like, he obviously brought up the rape thing and all that. But one thing he brought up his own story. He said that he's like, I girl pregnant, years ago, and if I didn't have abortion, we would have had to have this child, and then both our lives would have been ruined, and we wouldn't been able to live happy and thriving lives. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, like that of all the stuff that happened. But I mean, if you're asking me if abortion is justified so that you can have a better life, I'm like, no, I would never say that it's okay to sacrifice a child. Hence the Molech reference at the beginning, because if anybody knows anything about Molech, so for those of you who aren't Christian, Molech is a reference to an Old Testament idol, which is actually a metal statue of a body with a bull's head, and the arms would be held up like this, like they're metal bronze arms, and he's got a fire in his belly, and he's superheated. He's basically like an extremely red hot statue. And what they would do is the parents would bring their children, and they would give them to the priest. The priest would take these crying children and place them on top of these burning hot arms, and they would literally roast their children alive while they're screaming in obvious agony until they die from the burning, and then they throw them into that little oven as a sacrifice to the god Molech, because they believe that, if we give our child to Molech, then we're going to have good crops and good yield and lots of great things, and he's going to reward us for giving our child to him. By the way, the Aztecs also did child sacrifice. Again, same thing. They thought that their god would reward them with their sacrifices and good things. This is why this is the same thing today, because these are people who say our lives are supposed to be so much more valuable than their lives of these children that we don't want to have.
Yeah.
And so the abortion argument is basically a reverse gospel. If you think the gospel is Jesus died so that you can be free and you can live, the reverse is abortion. You die so that I may live and I may have all the good things that I want. And this is one of the most egregious sins in human history, really.
Oh yeah,
the amount of killing that we're doing. By the way, Shelley talked about the safe harbor laws.
It's just that actually you didn't know about it.
Safe harbor laws are an incredible thing. I've seen these amazing videos from. There's one, maybe I can share it later. There's a a video of a guy in, I think it's Asia, who, he created an entire, like, basically place where you can drop off the babies and he'd raise them and find them good homes and all that. The problem is, people say, well, if you ban abortion, what are we going to do with all these children? And guess what? They had the exact same question during the slavery, the whole slavery debate. Okay. Oh, if you ban slavery, what are we going to do with all these slaves? They're going to be everywhere and they're going to create havoc. And well, yeah, it's going to be crazy and there's going to be a lot of chaos, but it's the right thing to do. You cannot enslave people indefinitely. It's a moral evil. Same with abortion. The problem is that the people in this country are so comfortable with abortion.
Oh no, it's not a safe harbor law; it's a safe haven law.
Is safe haven?
Yeah, safe harbor laws are a little different.
Safe harbor.
I looked it up because I was like safe harbor law, and then I checked it out, and it's like that's
can't be right.
Not what that means. And then I'm like, okay, which is the law? And I literally Googled it. It was like, what is
safe
the
haven
law that allows you to drop off a child at a fire department? It's in safe haven laws. I'm like, that's the one.
Yeah.
So yes, we admonish ourselves, but not by that much because we were only a little bit off.
Well, and the funny thing is, we are literally going like with people. One of the talking points I see a lot in the abortion, especially at the Supreme Court. You and I heard this the other day when we showed the video of the Supreme Court people chanting. They said, we will not go back. We are not going back, right? Like the backwards, right? This is the progressive argument. The idea that history progresses toward, we're constantly evolving towards a better and better race.
Yeah.
The idea that everything that we do is good and is making the world better and more moral. I would make the argument because in the Roman Empire and before in history, infanticide was normal. It was normal to take your children and literally throw them out in the street and let them die from exposure. Christianity is the first major worldview that basically ended that. They ended that at 300s when they took the Roman Empire, and then going forward in Christendom, they were not allowed to kill children, both before and after. It's only now in the modern day that we're returning to our old ways of killing children.
Yep.
Now we're going back. So technically, we're trying to stop the back to our old ways of humanity of killing children for our own needs. But, so I argue that is the opposite. There's no we're going back. Is actually we're trying to stop from going back.
Yeah.
Which is what we've been doing for the last 50 years.
Indeed.
So, yeah. Like pro-abortion arguments, they're interesting. There's a lot of rules that you can. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to, but it's totally doable. Steven's great at it. He debates people all the time online. Shows people like what is and isn't okay. It's pretty great.
Yeah, the one like whenever I talk about abortion arguments, like my very first pro-life argument that I ever had was when I was 16 years old. And the reason that I had this argument is because I started this group on Facebook. It was the very first group I ever started. Because when I was in grade 11, between grade 11 and grade 12, somebody started, or the Canadian government gave Henry Morgenthau the Order of Canada. And I was like, nope. We should not be giving the Order of Canada to this genocidal maniac. We should revoke it. We should return it to the people of Canada. And an investigation should be started into this psychopath. And this one woman was like, well, like, these are really radical statements. And I'm like, okay. And so I like had this long conversation with her. And yeah, like, I've learned a lot since then in terms of like how to phrase my arguments. And a lot of my arguments were kind of emotional. But in the end,
she's like Kasparian.
They weren't that emotional.
Yeah,
it was more of like an appeal to emotion. Like I think one of the arguments that I used when I was 16, I was like, so like if your friend was having a child, and your friend's child miscarried, how would you feel about that? And she's like, well, I'd feel sad. And I'm like, well, why would you feel? It's like, okay, that same friend was having a child, and they decided to abort it. How would you feel? And she's like, well, I don't know. how I'd feel about it. Like, I'd probably feel a little bit relieved for them. And I'm like, but why would you feel relieved in one instance and sad in the other? You're saying that your emotional connection to the child is based on how much your friend wants that child.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, isn't that a terrible way to view human life? And she's like, I never thought about it that way. And I'm like, I know. And so that was like my argument when I was 16. And she's like, if I get pregnant, I'll put it up for adoption. And I'm like, okay then.
Good girl.
I'm like, that's a win in my book. And so it was like, that was my 16-year-old, like, I winning argument. But, all right. So that's basically going to be where we're going to end the show and wrap it up for tonight. It's a bit of a shorter episode than last week, but it was still very exciting, and we're definitely still very happy about the outcome from Monday night. And it's basically carried most of the stories this week. So
it has, yeah.
Roe is going out, and that's a fantastic thing. And we hope that it inspires and invigorates the pro-life community here in Canada.
Yep.
And we're going to see if we can find out and see if there's some sort of protest going on this weekend, and see if we can show up and be like, hey, what's up? Why are you guys fighting this?
Now, here's an important question I'm going to ask you, Stephen, because we haven't talked about this at all. What do you think the chances are that they go back and that they don't actually overturn it because of the public pressure? Because that was actually something that they
I was
mentioned.
actually I was listening. Decision. No, I was listening to Verdict with Ted Cruz and Michael Knowles, and because Ted Cruz used to clerk for Scalia, I believe, and so he was talking about like the regulative norms and all these things about like how crazy this being leaked was. And Michael Knowles is like, okay, like so far, like we know that this is confirmed, that this is actually the majority of opinion. He's like, what would happen if the opinions changed? And essentially Ted Cruz was like, if anybody at this point changes their vote because this has been leaked, then the Supreme Court as an institution could no longer be trusted.
Yeah, that would be huge.
And he's like, none of the judges will want that because their roles in society will basically be, well, now public pressure can mount against you. And we know that threats can, like, as long as we rise up a good amount of resistance or appearance of resistance and public pressure, then we can change your opinion. Then basically Supreme Court justices will need their own secret service.
Yeah, they will.
And it's like, no, this is that would fundamentally change the way that the court operates. And I don't think that the Supreme Court is going to operate that way. And like Ted Cruz was saying in Verdict today, it's likely that all 9 justices are horrified that this is leaked.
Well, except Sotomayor.
Well,
in case if it turns out that she helped the leak.
Yeah, it was likely a clerk for Sotomayor, but even Sotomayor is like, I doubt that she was super happy that it was leaked. And she's probably not openly admitting that it was her clerk, just because that would cause a lot of scrutiny her way. Yeah. And she would have to have a lot more judgment and discernment with picking a new clerk.
Yeah, she would.
But that's probably why she's not openly admitting it. But I don't think she's super happy about this being exposed, because she likely believes that there are right-wing extremists. So she's like, I could be threatened. I'm an openly Latinx person. Oh no.
I think that like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are solid. Like, I think like there's nothing you could do to change their mind. They hated that. I actually think Coney Barrett is probably pretty solid.
Yeah,
because she's I mean she admired Scalia like so much.
Well, and like Coney Barrett had quite a bit of grace under fire when it came to, like, that's one thing when it came to Kavanaugh, like him crying was not the best look. Because like, okay, like I totally understand why he cried, and like what they were doing to him was horrific. But it's like, okay, you're a Supreme Court justice and you're crying because of improper public scrutiny and improper public accusations. And I understand that it's a terrible thing, and I understand that they want to destroy your life for something you did not do. But I just kind of have this ideal and this impression that a Supreme Court justice has to be able to maintain a bit of a higher level.
That's the whole reason why the Supreme Court's supposed to be totally different.
They are.
Because people complain like, oh, why are they appointed? Oh, why are they lifetime? And it's like, well, that's because they have to be the most objective of all of the, and the most stable and objective of all of the branches of government. Like, there's a reason why Congress is constantly every 2 years, because they're accountable to their constituents. Yep. They have to be afraid of their constituents voting them out if they screw up. The president, same thing, every 4 years, because there's limits on what he can do and all that. And he does have to be accountable. The justices are only accountable to the law.
Yep.
And it should be that way. And that's why they're not pressured by, there's an election cycle. Oh, there's you're not going to go in and out. Your focus is the law.
Yep.
And that's why there's so much scrutiny put on them, whether or not they have to be qualified. And so now the thing is, I actually do think Coney Barrett's probably solid. Brett Kavanaugh, I would say, actually, I think he'd probably be solid because he held his own.
I would say the weakest of all of the most recent ones would be Gorsuch. Gorsuch, just because of, I think it was in 2020, how he wrote the majority opinion in that whole, transgender being, the new discrimination.
Yeah, I think he'd be
the only one that was a really poor thing, Gorsuch. That was a really poor thing.
Now, the other thing I could see potentially is I could possibly see John Roberts.
Yeah, John Roberts could. I could see him voting with the conservatives just because he's I disagree. I agree that Roe v. Wade was a terrible decision. I think there should be a new decision on that, but I disagree with Roe v. Wade. Because Roberts is, of course, a very soft liberal.
Here's why I'm thinking. If the majority of the court already believes it's going this way, then it would be safe for John Roberts to vote with them. That's why I think he hasn't waiting yet. Remember, he's the only one that was kind of undecided.
Yeah.
I think that's why, because he gave Alito the role of being the majority decision guy, because I'm Alito's already decided. But I think he could still vote with them, and I think he might, because not because he wants to enamor himself with the conservatives, but more because
care about that.
I think because he'll probably feel it's safe enough that he's not the deciding vote.
Yeah.
That he'd be like, you know what, I think I can really look at this one objectively and not worry about the fallout from this one. And I think that I could see that. Now I could also see him going with the liberals just to avoid any scrutiny for, I'm a bad guy who voted for this. But I would actually like to see not just a majority by one vote, but a majority by 2 votes would be very amazing.
Yep.
Because that would not only would that show that majority of the court agrees with this, but also you can't just blame 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
The liberals saying it's Coney Barrett or Kavanaugh. If it's Kavanaugh, we'd be done. It's well, no, if he does that, then all that talk goes away, and suddenly it's let's focus on something else and not the court. And that would actually save the court. I actually think that would actually save the court a ton of scrutiny.
It would.
And that would probably be the best thing that John Roberts would have done as far as a justice. So, yeah.
All right. And for anybody wanting to put in final remarks, it is the time for that now. But other than that, this is where we're going to end the show. So if you followed along, if you've commented, if you've been involved with the live stream in any way, thank you very much. We enjoyed all your commentary. We didn't have a lot from Twitch this week, which is a little surprising, but that's okay. It happens. So if you're following us regularly on our normal scheduled programming, if you're following us on our video platforms, we are on BitChute, we are on YouTube, and we are on Rumble. And of course, we're on YouTube only for live streams, just because it is, of course, the biggest platform and the easiest to get our message out. You can also check us out on the shrewddudes.com, where we have all our resources, all our articles, and of course, extra segments, extra episodes, specials that we've done, a whole conglomeration of things. That's all Danny's thing, and he's done a great job with that. If you're following us on our text platforms like Parler, Twitter, Gitter, Facebook, I'm in charge of that. I try and post reasonably regularly on that. I've been trying to post a lot more memes on Twitter now that Twitter is not as highly regulated, and I've been having some good response. So that's been great. And I think pretty close we're going to be hitting 1,000 on Twitter. So not too bad. And then we're aiming, of course, within a few weeks to have 5,000 on Gitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get her done. Get her
and then
done.
Parler, I'm just kind of like, you're kind of a dead platform, and I know that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's too
everybody.
bad. It was a great.
Oh, it was
great
fantastic
thing when it was going. Yeah.
When it was going, right before Amazon Web Services shut it down, 37,000 followers, and then we lost it. And
Destroyed.
that sucked.
Yeah.
So much. But
No, I
it is
agree.
what it is. Now we got to live with it. Got to move forward. Got to stay strong. Got to live free. So, all right, Danny, close us out.
All right. See you later, everybody. No, I'm just kidding. That's more for Steven. Hey, we're the Shrewd Dudes, and we love coming here and teaching you new things and having great dialogue. And one we always love to leave you with is our wonderful mantra: why be rude when you can be shrewd?
Exactly.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again on Tuesday for Tuesday News Day.
Yep. Until then, as always,